Welcome back to the channel, guys. We got more of the Napoleonic Wars. Today we're doing 1807. I want to say 19 every single time. Tells you what generation I'm from.
Feels more comfortable.
1807, and Napoleon was born in the 1700s.
Yes.
So this is, I think, the fourth video that we're doing now, and we're starting to get a feel for his tactics a bit more. He's definitely growing in influence, but I think there's like 14 of these videos or something, which
That's
I had no idea about before we started doing them.
Which is also crazy because it also seems like sometimes there's a little bit of jump in timeline as well. So it's like there's 14 videos, but then there's also probably information that's not even fully up. Yeah, and I think they added some videos on Epic History, which is a great channel, by the way. Totally recommend that you guys go and check them out. Give them a like, give them a subscribe. But I think Epic History added more Napoleon videos after they did the Napoleonic Wars to add information about Napoleon in after. But we haven't got that far yet. We're starting with the wars first. We've still got a long ways to go.
Which is wild. One thing that is wild is that, you know, we're seeing a war almost every year, a new war every year. And if there's 14 videos of Napoleonic Wars, that's a lot of wars. And I can see why.
Because he keeps being like, I'm not finished yet.
Well, no, last one, he was defending in the last one. Remember? They brought the strike on him. So, you know, it's back and forth.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Let's get into the Battle of Friedland from 1807.
One week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia.
Okay, Poland.
A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena. But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace. But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska. In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
Poland's always in the thick of it.
Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their saviour, praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state. Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause.
Strategic.
Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home.
Hate that place.
Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide.
Wow.
Marshal Ney...
It's interesting that reference there, because I feel like it wouldn't be a common thing to have occurred. 100 people, you know, at that time, I feel like would have been a huge, huge number, because, you know, a couple hundred years ago, I feel like somebody taking their own life was not very common at all.
No, definitely not. And
I mean, you probably have passed away, you know, relatively easily. So it's not like you would be thinking about it, taking your own life if you had made it through the thick and thin of life in general, right?
Yeah, and even being a deserter, right? Like, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure in those times, if you became a deserter, it was like asking to be executed if you were caught, right? So again, it was like you're walking a fine line between life and death there.
And like I was saying about Poland, they're just always in like every single war that we've done thus far. They just are just caught right in the middle. And, interesting because in the last video we talked about Prussia, we're unsure what that was about. Obviously, a lot of German influence there. And we see, Poland here, how they were influential and the way they was divvied up. But it's crazy. The maps just, change so frequently over a couple hundred years.
Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide. Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move. They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear.
Need some more reconnaissance.
But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French.
So much for winter.
But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau.
What a massacre without any result. Marshal Ney in the Battle of Eylau.
The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost. Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen, led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history. At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both sides are estimated to have lost a third of their armies in the carnage.
Wow.
After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French...
It's interesting because we see that this is the first time that Napoleon failed to win, and it also felt like he almost got drawn into this war because initially the attack came from the opposing general. Can't remember his name at the moment, but he initiated the attack, right? And then Napoleon was like, okay, we're going to counter, and we're going to draw him in, we're going to come behind his flank, take advantage of him. Then that failed, and he retreated, and then he was pursued by Napoleon, right? And so that wasn't initially a part of the plan, right? And so he kind of got drawn into this war at a time when he initially in winter wasn't planning to do so, with his fatigued troops and everything else, probably himself as well. Yeah. And then got into a battle in a snowstorm, and you can see how the dominoes kind of when the way they fell in this one led to him losing, and how it's such a fine line between a win and a loss. But normally, as a tactician, so far anyways, Napoleon has been very, very smart about, when he's going to take these risks. And it seems like in this one, he was just, like, okay, we got to pursue.
Yeah. And I think like you said, right, he was drawn in initially, like that wasn't the plan, but, then he decided, okay, well, we'll go like take advantage of this situation. But then because the like note or the correspondence got intercepted, the whole thing kind of
blew up.
Yeah.
To rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkreuth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French Emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops. But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June.
I feel like that's a bad
Ney
idea.
conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defences. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Eylau River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' reserve corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland.
Ride your horse into the ground if you have to, but tell the Emperor we're fighting for the entire Russian army.
In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Eylau River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it.
It's a trap.
And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army.
There he goes.
Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy.
Trying to delay him.
Lannes was still holding off the Russians as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river.
Just build bridges
But
overnight.
Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a...
Go ahead.
I was like, this Bennigsen guy seems to be like living life on the edge. Like he likes to take some risks.
Clearly. And he, I mean, also, not to be overlooked, is building a bridge in a night.
Overnight. Like, let's just go build some bridges.
But the capability to do that, I mean, we look at construction projects now that take months. These are, I mean, who knows how big the bridge is, but
not to mention, they wouldn't have had any power tools or lighting to assist them.
That's you know, what is also mind-blowing. As you said, though, it's kind of seems not the smartest strategic approach to take. And, you know, we're going to cross this river just to go after, you know, a few of these lonesome troops that are out there. I mean, I guess the other side of it is if they don't go and attack them, then they're probably going to follow them anyways. I mean, they're going to have a larger group of numbers with them included in the force of 15,000 over whatever it was when Napoleon arrives later. So if they have an opportunity to take them out now, and then they don't have to face that as a part of the Napoleonic army later, it might be advantageous. However, it seems like, as you said, it's very risky, you know, to go and build a bridge just so you can get over there. It's taking a lot of time. It's not as going as fast as you would expect.
He also seems like he's just like randomly, like willy-nilly being like, let's go attack these people. Like he just keeps like going and attacking them out of nowhere.
All right, let's continue.
But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle, his army would have to fight with its back to the river, and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right. Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react. The first French reinforcements arrived that night. The Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
We won't catch the enemy making a mistake like this twice. They made a mistake.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Eylau River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre. In Sortlac Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived.
Here comes
he was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières. The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army, and issued orders for a retreat.
Just did all that work, man.
Built all the bridges for nothing.
This is the objective advance, looking neither right nor left, bore into this thick mass, cost what it may.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlac Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot. Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned.
Back over the bridge! Run, run,
As
run!
exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack.
Looks like bad news.
With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river. But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned.
Yeah, I saw that one coming because now they're boxed. You saw, a couple minutes ago, they were all boxed against the river itself, right? They couldn't turn and run anywhere, and now they're confined to having to go down this one path where they built the bridge if they do want to retreat, right? So you see all these numbers coming through from the French side of things, and it's like, okay, if this doesn't go well, how the hell are we going to get out of here? And they can just shoot down the bridge and you're screwed, right?
I think some of the bridges that they made were even on fire. Like if you look on the river, it's literally on fire.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's because they've shot them probably with cannons or whatever, or lit them on fire maybe. But you
saw like some green guys like literally run down there and like go over the little bridge. Some of them made it across, but not many.
It's very cool just to see this play by play though of all the movements, the dynamic movements between each troops and their subsets, even when they're bringing in one area of the forces, taking out another. A lot of the troop movements we're getting to see in detail. So this one I think is one of the more intricate battles that we're seeing, all the movement fronts,
and like all like the, like you said, like step by step by step.
But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river, others killed or captured. North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the river bank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat.
It's just like a free-for-all.
The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career. At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men, killed, wounded or taken prisoner.
40%.
40% of Bennigsen's army.
Wow.
Now they're going to chase him.
The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed.
Wow. Perhaps I was happiest at Tilsit. I found myself victorious, dictating laws, having emperors and kings pay me court.
Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport. Tilsit proved to be one of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed. While Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold. And it was Prussia who would lose most in the Treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother Jerome, and the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard.
Getting stronger.
Russia only had to give up the Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with Napoleon that left the French Emperor master of Europe. Alexander even agreed to join the Continental System, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain, which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports. The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace. There was just one problem. The Continental System didn't work.
That is a problem. It's all about money. We got to get our...
Not only was it impossible to enforce
trade.
and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade.
Could see that.
The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy, which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands. Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety. The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland as a base for smuggling British goods into Europe. But most disastrously for Napoleon, the Continental System would draw him into two conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire. The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the Continental System. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country. The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight. It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning.
Dun, dun, dun.
I guess that's
Thanks
next.
to our sponsor, Skillshare, for supporting this video.
Skillshare was a sponsor for Epic History. Like we said in the beginning, make sure you go check out Epic History. Fantastic stuff. You got the narrator, Charles Grove, here. Music is Film Stro. So yeah, they do a great job. So make sure you support them too.
Yeah.
So really, really interesting closeout to that video there. Obviously, this, the big portion of it was the Friedland 1807, which we've seen Napoleon dominate.
Yeah.
Tactics really played a role in that one. Also the mistakes, as we saw. Napoleon saw the mistake, took advantage of it, right?
Yeah, it was also just crazy because right before we got into that part, we were talking about how battles that were initiated by the other side then kind of turned out to not be in Napoleon's favor. But then this one was initiated by the other side, by them being greedy and being like, let's go across the river and take out these people. Meanwhile, he kind of swooped in last minute, brought all the troops in to support, and then dominated. So
yeah, but that's what we were saying though, right? In that the first time that he lost, he went and pursued and did so not on his own terms, right? And in this one, he was forced, but it was in a defensive position, so it wasn't like he was taking the risk. It was the other guy taking the risk. He made mistakes. He took advantage of the mistakes, right? Yeah. So whereas in the other one, it was Napoleon that made the mistake of trying to fight maybe when his troops are more
not ready.
Yeah. Anyways, so interesting, like I was saying at the end there, because we see that Napoleon has conquered Europe essentially. He's got diplomatic ties with the eastern side. Land mass is basically all conquered. Looks like Great Britain is being completely
iced out.
Yeah, iced out, and they're turned off from the trade. But this is where we see the economic impacts of trade, and how the people within an empire play a role as well, because they still want to take part in the trade. They don't care what Napoleon wants. It's like, no, we got to make our money, so we want to participate in the trade because this economic activity needs to take place between all of us. We don't care if you don't want us to take part in it. We're going to do it anyways. And then you have Napoleon controlling the ground, but then you see that Britain's navy was really dominant, and that allowed them to control the ports, which means that the supply lines, initially Napoleon tried to control the supply lines, didn't work because they didn't have the capabilities to have the imports, right? The imports are the key component, because if you can't get anything from anywhere else, imported in, then you're kind of screwed. But Britain has the ships, they can go anywhere and get anything that they want.
Go pick it up.
So, the supply lines are really, really important. And we're seeing that, on the outside, if you look at the map, you're like, well, Great Britain's screwed. But it's the fact that they're off in this little island that they have this, power structure already in place, but because they're on an island, that they have some strategic advantages in that regard from their positioning.
Yeah, and they, like you said, could take their ships to go anywhere that they want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's crazy also just to see, like you said, the landmass of like similar, not the same, but similar to Alexander the Great, like how he's just like spreading wider and wider and wider.
mostly over Europe as well.
Yeah.
So Europe has been a free-for-all many times.
Yeah, and creating alliances with Russia.
And that continued later on into World War I and World War II. So I wonder where we're headed for number 3 in the 2000s. I wonder if that's going to take place. Hopefully not. Anyways, we'll leave on that note. That's a great note to leave on. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I did for sure. And I'm excited to now check out the next one where we're going to see the Peninsula battle, which it seems like Britain's coming back into the fold here.
And like moving back over to like Portugal and Spain kind of area.
Yeah, because I've never heard anything about that before.
No, me either. Which I also thought was interesting that they fled from Portugal to Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, guys, hit that like button for us. Leave us a comment, give us insights on anything that we might have missed. And sorry if you've already commented some things that on our previous videos. We haven't uploaded any of these yet. We're doing them in order, but we haven't uploaded them yet. So if you've already commented something that we've missed, again, our apologies. But we'll start uploading them soon, so we'll keep track of that. Anyways, thank you for all your comments, all your insights, all the likes, all the views, all the subscriptions. Super, super supportive. Really, really appreciate it. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you on our next video.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.